Hey everyone, let me ask you this. What if one drink, just one cup of coffee, or an alcoholic beverage could get you judged by your entire community and even keep you from entering heaven? Sounds crazy, right?
Well, that's exactly what's happening in Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, where the Mormon Health Code, also known as the Word of Wisdom, is at the center of not just faith, but serious social pressure. We're talking how one sip can lead to shame, judgment, and even questioning if you're Mormon enough.
And today we're diving deep into the health code, where it comes from, why it's so important, and the surprising hypocrisies that come with it, like chugging soda but banning coffee. So stick around, this one's going to be eye-opening. Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 35 kids. We were members of the FLDS Church, which is a polygamous community run by their prophet, Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a life sentence in prison.
I was raised at the mainstream LDS Church in Utah. Sam and I have been married for 10 years and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. Today we're diving deep into something that's been getting a lot of buzz because of the new hit TV show, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
And we're going to tackle a key part of Mormon culture that's featured on the show, the Word of Wisdom. For those who don't know what it is, it's basically a health code for the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the LDS Church. It's something both Sam and I were raised with, but we've got some different perspectives to share.
Yes, we do.
So let's start with where the Word of Wisdom comes from. It was introduced by Joseph Smith in 1833 and is found in Doctrine and Covenants, section 89, which is an LDS book of modern revelations. It's a revelation that includes dietary guidelines and was supposed to promote health and well-being for church members.
It outlines prohibitions against things like alcohol, tobacco, coffee, and tea, though fun fact, the word coffee and tea aren't even mentioned specifically. They say hot drinks, which was later interpreted by church leaders to mean coffee and tea. There's also encouragement to eat grains, fruits, and a little bit of meat.
It's seen as a divine commandment today, but interestingly, when Joseph Smith first shared it, it was considered more of a suggestion. It says in the very first verse that it was not meant to be a commandment. Even early church leaders weren't really strict about following it.
And this is interesting because in the FLDS Church, where I was raised, they held the original suggestion instead of commandment. For example, around the community, within the FLDS community, I would see members and even church leaders drinking alcohol and coffee and tea and things like that. In my specific home, we were not allowed to drink alcohol or coffee. My father always told us that if a suggestion is given by God, we should follow that suggestion, right? So it depended on the family within the FLDS community, but overall, as a church, they looked at it as it was originally intended, which is a suggestion.
Which makes sense for fundamentalists to follow it so precisely, right? But over time in the mainstream LDS Church, it became a marker of righteousness and worthiness. If you don't follow the Word of Wisdom, you can't get a temple recommend, which is huge in Mormon culture and so important. And the leaders have reinforced this idea over and over and over again.
Yeah, just to throw in a quote from Brigham Young, he says, "If the saints obey this counsel, they will enjoy health and long life, be better prepared to preach the gospel, and have the strength to serve in God's kingdom." It's seen as a way to keep your body, which is called a temple, pure.
In Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, you can see how the Word of Wisdom isn't just a set of rules. It's a way for people to judge each other. The cultural pressure is huge.
Yeah.
It's not just about obeying God's commandments. It's about looking righteous to the community. If you're not following the Word of Wisdom, it's almost like a scarlet letter in some Mormon circles. The show really captures this well. The sense that you're being constantly watched and evaluated for whether you're Mormon enough. A great example of this is when Jessie and her husband brought alcohol to Jen's party for her husband's graduation. To those who are not raised in Mormon culture, this whole thing probably seems like pretty silly. But there's also a pressure that if you know or are raised with the rules of Mormonism, it's your responsibility to follow them, whether you believe it or not. And it's your job because it's seen as disrespectful if you don't.
Exactly. And this kind of cultural shaming makes it so much more than a health code. It becomes a way to measure your commitment to the faith. If you don't follow it, you might not just lose your respect from friends and family. You could also face direct consequences from the church and leadership.
Yes, in the show, you see the friends start splitting themselves after the hot tub incident into sinners and saints because those that they were afraid weren't respectful enough at the last party became uninvited to Jen's baby's blessing.
Exactly. And this fear of being judged for the smallest infractions is real. I've seen it firsthand, especially when people are trying to get into the temple or hold important church callings.
But here's where things get interesting, or well, kind of hypocritical. One of the big cultural things in Utah is that even though Mormons avoid coffee and tea because of the word of wisdom, a lot of them have no problem with soda. And I'm talking sugary, caffeine-loaded kinds.
Right. Like you see in Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, there is no shame in chugging a Dr. Pepper, but order a latte and suddenly people are questioning your faith.
The church's official stance is technically against harmful substances, but soda somehow gets a pass, and we see a lot of confusion for people who hear from some sources the caffeine is not allowed and from others that it is allowed, and I want you all to know where that myth comes from, because I hear all the time people will be like, you can't drink caffeine, and then they're surprised when I'm having a Diet Dr. Pepper growing up, or when I had church leaders who would go from young women's camp off the mountain just to go get their Diet Coke. So let's dispel that myth a little bit. So basically, in the Doctrine and Covenants, it specifically says hot drinks. Well, leadership later came to clarify that as meaning coffee and tea. But it wasn't ever explained beyond that as to why those were the hot drinks. Did hot chocolate count? Did other hot teas, do herbal teas count? And so basically, the culture became trying to make sense of why this rule was ever in there. And the thing that people would look at is both coffee and black tea have a lot of caffeine in it. So church members started saying, well, it must be because of the caffeine, rather than saying, that's just a rule because the prophet said so. So where's the line between there just being church culture and there being doctrine? Doctrinally, there's nothing against caffeine because it doesn't say it. However, the church encourages certain parts of church culture.
Exactly.
In the sense that caffeine was banned from all of the Brigham Young University campuses. Okay, so which Brigham Young University is a church-owned school that is run by church leaders. And so if they are not allowing caffeine on their campuses, what does that say to the whole church and their culture? So no, doctrinally, there's nothing against caffeine. Recently, BYU has lifted the ban, I believe, as to allowing caffeine on their campuses. But they were a big contributor to the culture of saying that caffeine was bad. And so people have continued to draw that parallel, even though it's not doctrinal. So I know it's a little side note, but I think it matters because I think people are oftentimes confused.
Yeah.
And as soon as caffeine doesn't matter anymore, it kind of brings the word of wisdom back to because church leaders say so. Because there's no other reason why just coffee, just tea, unless it is about the caffeine, there's no other reason except for that.
And of course, there will be health people throughout the world that will have their opinions about whether coffee and tea is healthy or not. So, there's always going to be opinions about what you should be consuming or not. So it really comes down to what are the church leaders saying, and people just saying, well, if it's a suggestion from God, like my own father, then why don't we follow it?
Exactly.
Right? So bringing this all back to why it is so important for church members to follow the word of wisdom. Remember that this is all in the name of trying to treat your body as a sacred temple.
And you hear that term a lot growing up, and it's another cultural aspect that we have to talk about. A lot of LDS members use that phrase as a reason to avoid anything harmful. You'll hear that a lot about tattoos or drugs or other harmful substances. They say, you need to treat your body like a temple. But have you noticed the amount of plastic surgery in Utah?
Yeah, that's a bit weird, right?
Yeah.
If your body's a temple, why are you going under the knife for cosmetic reason? And Utah has some of the highest rates of plastic surgery in the entire country. It feels a little bit like a contradiction.
And just to be clear, we are not trying to hate on plastic surgery. I think that if people want to do something that's going to help them feel best in their skin, then they should go for it. But we're just trying to bring up kind of this double-sided ideology within Mormonism, because it's like on one hand, Mormons are taught to take care of their bodies and they're sacred and all these other things, but there's this pressure to look perfect, and you've got everything from Botox, nose job, boob jobs, especially among the women. It's a tough cultural standard to kind of draw the line from.
Yeah, in Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, you see how women in the community are balancing these conflicting messages. It highlights the pressure to appear righteous while also fitting into like a certain image of beauty, which adds a lot of stress to the hypocrisy.
Yeah, and we've heard on social media before that people feel like it's hard to even tell the difference between some of these these women because they have similar features when they're getting Botox in certain places and fillers in certain places. So you see a lot of like their facial structure kind of becoming similar because they're all getting the same work done, right? So it's one of those, I don't know, it's very interesting to see what the picture of beauty in Utah is. I've heard a lot of people from all over the country be like, oh, Utah has very beautiful women, or they'll say that like the Utah women do the most.
And it's not even the people on the outside are saying that. There's people within Utah that are constantly joking about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know of people that say, oh, yeah, you see all these beautiful women walk by and wow, how much of that's real, right? Like, and these are people within Utah that are making that joke. So it's pretty well known throughout the state.
I kind of always joke that like I could never afford to move back to Utah to do all the things, all the extensions, the eyelashes, the eyebrows, the lip filler, the Botox, the injections. So we'll stay here in Vegas. But another thing that you see on the show is the women using like these opportunities to get Botox to get like laughing gas, right? To feel high, because getting high is against church standards and against the word of wisdom. So it's really just a way for them to get around it and get this loophole. And that's something that the show also emphasizes. You kind of get to see these loopholes.
But the real question is it the letter of the law or the spirit of the law that actually truly matters? Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Are these actually loopholes, or do they not matter at all because they aren't specifically mentioned in the word of wisdom?
And is being labeled Mormon something that's a personal choice, or is it defined by your commitment to following the rules? Is it just the rules that can be judged outwardly that people can see, or should it all depend on your personal relationship with God and your core beliefs? Have you been watching the show, or if you're just curious about these Mormon culture topics, we hope this video helped break it down for you.
Hey, thanks for watching, and if you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into Mormon culture, history, and our own personal experiences.
Thanks for being here. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Hey, thank you all. We'll talk to you soon.